So, the seed for our trip to Mississippi was planted during our previous year's mission trip to Benton Harbor, Michigan. We decided that every few years we would take a longer distance trip for a new experience. But before we could go anywhere, we needed to begin fundraising efforts. The traditional cake auction was well supported by the congregation and raised thousands of dollars. Participants enjoyed a taco bar brunch and good fellowship while bidding on fabulous cakes. The congregation's generous and tasty support is what makes our mission trip possible, and for that we are truly grateful. The bowling fundraiser brought bowlers of all ages together for a fun afternoon of pizza, pop, a silent auction, and knocking down pins. A good time was had by all. Part of our fundraising for each trip is to be able to donate to the places we volunteer to help further benefit their mission. We donated $2,000 to the Back Bay mission as part of our trip. Don't we look well organized? Saturday, June 23rd finally arrived, and 11 adults and 5 youth met at the church to pack up 3 rented minivans and get on the road. I don't think I'm going to have time to read everyone's name, so look for anyone wearing an orange shirt in the congregation. This is a more accurate depiction of what that chaotic morning looked like. Many family members gathered to see us off. In an hour, we fit suitcases, bedding, snacks, iPods, water bottles, sunscreens, and backpacks into 416 into 3 minivans, figured out who was sitting with whom, and we were off to Costco to buy an extra walkie-talkie. After that, we hit the road. After several hours on the road, we were ready for a sightseeing break. We stopped to see the big Hug Me Jesus statue at the Solid Rock Church near Cincinnati. Shortly thereafter, we learned that GPS navigation can sometimes not be as direct or efficient as we might have hoped, as it took us the long way to get somewhere for lunch. After 2 days of driving and fast food meals, we arrived at our destination, Back Bay Mission in Biloxi, Mississippi. Our accommodations were at a recently built facility for volunteers right at the mission. We were happy to have this air-conditioned refuge from the heat and humidity. Also staying at the mission house was a volunteer group who was returning for their 7th year in a row, and it was great to hear their perspectives as well. This is Bob. Bob was our team leader for the week. He is holding Balto, our mascot for the trip. Our first volunteer day started with an opening discussion, a safety orientation, and learning about the various work that Back Bay does in the Gulf Coast area. Our first workday found us at the home of an elderly couple who needed their house painted. Ladders, brushes, and paint buckets were assembled, and we set to work. Much of the prep work had been done by a previous group of volunteers, so we could begin painting immediately. In addition to the painting, those with carpentry skills were asked to build a porch at the back door to make it easier for the couple to get into and out of their house. We learned it is almost impossible to build a new porch onto an old house that is square to both the house and the ground. But we did our best. Frequent water breaks under the shade trees were a requirement. We enjoyed talking with the owners and with Bob as we rested. As Bob would remind us, the work would get done, so there's no need to push it. It was important that we not push ourselves in the heat, as it would be very easy to become dehydrated or suffer from heat exposure. Thankfully, we took good care of one another. Many hands made quick work. By midday on Wednesday, the house was completed with only half the crew on site. Some of us had gone on to the next projects, others were volunteering at other mission sites, including preparing a mailing for the mission. At our second house, we had a bit more prep work to do. Some wood needed to be replaced, and the windows needed to be repointed. We also needed to prune a rose bush, power wash, and scrape. Later in that week, the heat started rising towards the 90s. Our daily routine included kitchen duty for breakfast and dinner and making our own sack lunches. There were daily runs to the grocery store for supplies. Dinners were shared with the other groups staying at the mission, and we took turns cooking for each other. They treated us to a shrimp boil complete with all the fixings on our last night. After work, we spent time at the beach, where a dip in the Gulf of Mexico was refreshing, except for the jellyfish. Other after-hour activities included relaxing with games at the mission or just resting. There was a fair amount of shenanigans, mostly having to do with who had Balto. Over the course of the week, Balto was kidnapped, ransomed, and he went out exploring on his own, meeting new people. If you want to know more, check out his Facebook site, Balto de Bethlehem, on facebook.com. An important part of each day were our daily devotions. We prayed for our prayer partners here at the church and then wrestled with the lessons of the Beatitudes that we studied each day, trying to learn how they could be lived out in contemporary life and with contemporary issues. We were often left with more questions than answers. Wednesday evening, we attended worship at a local church. They regularly welcome Back Bay volunteers. We enjoyed experiencing a different style of worship, which included old-time gospel hymns, personal sharing, and mixing and sitting with others in the congregation, as you experienced with our passing of the peace today, except they didn't let us go back to our original seats. In addition to working with the housing rehabilitation program, everyone had an opportunity to work at some of the other programs run by Back Bay. One was the Loaves and Fishes Community Kitchen. Another service opportunity was helping to staff the Micah Day Center, housed at Back Bay Mission, which provided places for showers, laundry, haircuts, mail, phone, computer availability, and respite from the outdoors. On Thursday, we took an afternoon off to explore the area. Some went to New Orleans to enjoy the French Quarter, and others stayed to further explore Biloxi. The cranes in the upper left corner are a sculpture created from a tree destroyed by Hurricane Katrina. Those that had come to Biloxi in 2008 to help with Katrina cleanup were pleased to see the recovery in the area. On Friday, after our workday was done, we met with the other volunteer group and Back Bay staff to evaluate our week, celebrate our successes, and to discuss what we'd learned. We ended with a traditional shrimp boil. The next day, we packed up and hit the road for home.